Hey, hi everybody. So continuing with our discussion about motivational interviewing, and now we're going to start to get into some of the kind of meat and potatoes of MI. What we've done so far, I think, is relatively, common in just good communication, counseling skills. Being able to sort of engage a client, kind of focus the conversation. Um, so the real sort of nuances, I guess, kind of the real sort of meat and potatoes of motivational interviewing is actually around the concept of change talk. And so with MI, we're really sort of holding off in our conversation to get to planning by going through these different phases. And so now we're kind of at the evoking phase, where we want to look at drawing out from the client their reasons for change. So evoking involves eliciting the client's own motivations for change. Most simply put, it's having the person voice the arguments for change. So remember, in our issue about kind of the ambivalence and the writing reflex, is that our temptation as clinicians is to start making suggestions to fix problems. And that tends to lead to pushback from the client and start to give their arguments why they can't make the change. So in motivational interviewing, we want the client to be making their arguments for change. So we kind of have to kind of flip that around. And part of how we do that is we step out of this role of trying to fix it. And so we work more on kind of the evoking, bringing it forth from the client. Now, MI works with this concept of change talk. And so we make a distinction between change talk and sustained talk. So if you think of a client talking about making a change, sustained talk is the talk which are basically the reasons for not making the change, whereas change talk is the client stating the reasons for making a change. So if I start saying to you, well, I would like to be more physically fit, that's change talk. But I'm just, it's just a kind of a bad time right now. I like to run, or I like to go to the gym, but because of COVID right now, the gyms aren't safe, and a lot of them are still closed down. And I think I'll wait till COVID is over. So that's sustained talk. It's my reasons for not making the change, where the change talk is, I'd like to be physically fit. I'm getting older here, and I need to, pay more attention to my health. So my reasons for change, that's my change talk. So we want to be cognizant when a client is talking, are they expressing sustained talk or change talk? And so the skill set about being able to recognize change talk and then create more change talk is central to motivational interviewing. Now let's take a closer look at change talk. And so it uses an acronym, darn cats, maybe I'll put both of them up here. And so it looks at change talk as two kinds of change talk. There's preparatory change talk, which is the kind of talk I have when I'm thinking about making a change. I'd like to be more physically fit. In the past I've gone to the gym, but I really should do something about this. So that's kind of preparatory change talk. Commitment talk is where I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, the gyms are closed down, but I think I could start running. And I think what I'll do is I'll go to Walmart, and I'm going to buy myself some jogging gear, and I'll get myself a good pair of running shoes. And so I'm starting to make a commitment. Activation is, I went to Walmart and I bought my jogging outfit. And then taking steps is, I went, I haven't gone running for a long time, but I went for like just kind of a short walk and kind of jog yesterday. So I was taking steps. So we have these two kinds of change talk. Now, obviously, commitment talk is where we want to get to with a client. But in the conversation, we're going to be happy to get preparatory talk, and we're going to work at kind of keeping that talk going until it can kind of move into commitment talk. So in preparatory talk, we have talk that's desire, talk that's about ability, talk that's about reason, talk that's about need. And so desire is I want I desire this change. So I would like to be in better physical condition. I would like to be physically healthy. Ability. Well, I used to jog, and that seemed to work out for me before. I could start jogging. The gyms are all closed down or not safe, but jogging would work. So I have the ability to go jogging. Reason, well, I'm older and I need to pay more attention to my health. I'm starting to get more medical problems, and being physically healthy would be a good thing. So I have a reason for that. Need is statements where I need to do this. It's about time. I got to get off my duff, and I need to do this, right? And so that's the need talk. Commitment talk, I'm not going to worry too much about that. Commitment is where I say I'm going to do this, and there's sort of a dedication to doing it. Activation is I have a plan. I know what I'm going to do. And taking steps is I've done it. So this darn cats kind of outlines the different kinds of change talk that we might see in a client. So we want to be able to recognize that and zero in on that. So I've got a conversation here, and we can kind of use it as an example. I've always liked playing poker. It started out as a social thing with friends. I started playing online just to practice. A bit of betting just made it more fun. But my partner is getting on my case. He doesn't like how much time I spend online. He's kind of a clean freak and wants me to do more chores around the apartment. But I don't want to fight, but I wish he'd chill. Sometimes I'd get carried away and spend more money than I'd like, but it's a break from the monotony of being unemployed. If I had something more interesting to do, I wouldn't need to go online. It wouldn't have come to this if he would take it up as well. I guess I need to do something about it. Okay, so we've got lots of sort of conversation there. We can see the ambivalence. There's part of him that just enjoys playing poker online and doesn't want to give it up, and another part of him that does realize that he kind of needs to do something with it. So clients are going to talk like this, and what we want to do is we want to be able to zero in on the change talk within the conversation. So let's just kind of go through this a bit. I've always liked to play poker. Okay, right? I mean, that's not change talk. It started out as a social thing. Started playing online just to practice. So this is kind of information, maybe a little bit sustained talk, but it's really just more information. A bit of betting made it more fun. But my partner is getting on my case. Okay, so that's not really change talk, but it starts to sort of imply that he has some desire there. So it's not really full desire. He's not saying I don't want my partner to be on my case, but a follow-up question or a reflection would kind of help you there. You don't like it the way it is right now. No, I don't. I don't want to fight. Right. So there's sort of the potential for desire talk there, but it's not really clear to talk. He doesn't like how much time I spend online. Again, same kind of thing. He's kind of a clean freak and wants me to doing more chores around the apartment. He's kind of blaming the partner here. But I don't want to fight, but I wish he'd chill. So we've got a double statement. Clients do this all the time. They'll say both sides of their ambivalence. I don't want to fight, but I wish he was different. If he would just change. So in terms of change talk, we want to focus on the change talk, but I don't want to fight. So there's desire there. Sometimes I get carried away and spend more money than I like. Okay. Right. So again, that starts to look like desire. I spend more money than I'd like. So we can kind of put that in our kind of little memory banks and maybe come back to that. But it's a break from the monotony of being unemployed. So okay, it's a break. That's the sustained talk. That's why I do it. That's why I need to keep doing it, because I'm bored. If I had something more interesting to do, then I don't need to go on. Then I wouldn't need to go online. Bit of a typo there. If I had something more interesting to do, I wouldn't need to go online. So what does that say in terms of change talk? Well, it starts to look a little bit like ability. if I had something alternative to do, then it wouldn't be such a problem. It wouldn't have come to this if he would have taken it up as well. If he would play poker, it wouldn't be a problem. What is that? Well, it's kind of blaming. It's sustained talk. Or it's not even that. It's just kind of blame. I guess I need to do something about it. All right. So there again, we've got kind of need, right? Did I get I don't think I got an example of reason. Maybe, I spend more money than I like. I guess that constitutes reason. These categories aren't black and white. There's lots of overlap. So desire and reason are often very much kind of mixed in there, as well as need. So the skill here as a clinician is the ability to kind of recognize change talk in a conversation. The temptation of a clinician is to go into the problem areas. The problems with his roommate, that his roommate is kind of overzealous about house cleaning. The roommate doesn't like to play poker, right? And so we want to fix those problems. But in terms of motivational interviewing, we're more interested in the change talk and identifying and recognizing that, identifying and expanding on that. Okay. So the first skill set is, can we recognize? The second skill set is, how do we get clients to come up with their own reasons for change? So if they're not saying anything that's about change talk, how do we do that? Well, so the skills we'll kind of take a look at is just kind of asking good questions. So we want to ask questions that generate change talk. We'll talk about importance and confidence rulers, and also the use of making reflections. So we want to have good open-ended questions that evoke change talk, and purposely ask questions that will bring about change talk. And we want to purposely avoid questions that bring about sustained talk. So a question: why is it important for you to stop smoking at some point? So the client says, I don't know, I probably, smoking's probably not. Well, why is it important that at some point you would stop smoking? Right, and so this it's not cornering the client into like, when are you going to stop smoking? But if you were to decide to stop smoking, why would that be important for you? And so it elicits their reasons, which is change talk. A question we wouldn't want to do is, what keeps you from stopping smoking, right? And so because this will trigger sustained talk. Well, now's not a good time. Every time I've tried before, it hasn't worked. So we want to be asking, good questions that trigger change talk, and we can look at it based on kind of the darn cat scenario, or at least we'll look at the darn side of it first. So desire, what would you like to see happen? Okay, what's important for you? Ability, what could you try? What makes this important for you to do something about? Gets at reason. How important is this for you? So we can keep using those questions. So we want to think about questions that are going to trigger change talk. And this is really kind of the skill area that clinicians probably need to kind of put a lot of work into kind of practicing, is to kind of generate that kind of discussion. Remember this? We talked about this in our very first video on motivational interviewing, that what is moving a person towards change is, do they believe that it's important to make that change, and also how confident are they about making that change. So we can also ask questions that generate or increase the sense of importance and increase the sense of confidence. And one of the ways to do that is to use what we call confidence rulers. And kind of this was kind of put out also in solution focused. The idea of creating sort of a 10-point scale. So in terms of importance, we could say, how important is it for you to stop smoking on a scale of 1 to 10? And many clinicians will have kind of a piece of paper with this kind of on it. And the client will say, well, like it's a 4, say. And so we get them sort of identify. And we can also do this with confidence. How confident are you that you could stop smoking if you wanted to? If you were to decide to stop smoking, how confident are you that you could do that? And then again, they can pick a number there. And it gives you kind of a sense of where they're at. But it also starts you into the conversation. Oh, here we go. Okay, so in terms of responding, so that's interesting that you choose a 3 and not something lower like a 2 or a 1. Why is it at that level of importance and not a 2? So here what we're doing is we're using, even though it's a low score, rather than saying, why is it low? Right? We wouldn't want to say that. Why wouldn't we want to say that? Because that'll produce sustained talk. Why is it just a 3? Well, it's good, and they give you the sustained talk. But if you say to them, why isn't it a 2? Why isn't it lower? Well, I do recognize there are some health benefits to not smoking. And so that triggers change talk, right? So why isn't it 2? Why isn't it lower, right? Or you can ask the question, what would help you move to a 4? What would help you move up the scale? Well, I guess if I kind of looked a little bit more into, some information on smoking, that would help me kind of, move up that scale. If I talked to somebody who had quit smoking, that might help me move up the scale. And so, but again, we don't want to ask the question, why aren't you at a higher level? Because that'll produce sustained talk. I'm not at a 4 because blah, blah, blah. And so they give you the reasons for not changing. So we want to be very specific that the questions we ask are going to produce change talk. But these kind of 10-point scales, confidence, importance rulers are a useful tool to consider. Very simple thing that you can do with the client. Okay, well, so let's say we get a bunch of change talk. What do we do with it, right? So we recognize change talk, we see it, we ask some questions that generate it. What do we do with it then? So here we want to look at elaborating, reflections, and what we call bouquets. Okay, so one of the most simple things to do is just get the person to talk more about that. So tell me more about why you'd like to not fight with your partner. Tell me more about that. How do you see that happening? What would need to happen for that to occur? Tell me more about that. So asking for examples with that, or elaboration, and then of course examples. And some of this, overlaps with what you've learned with solution focus. Tell me about the last time Tell me about the last time when you didn't fight. Tell me about times when you haven't been fighting. In what ways has that happened? And so getting clients to be more specific about kind of the change. Just because what you want to do here is you just want to keep the conversation going on the change talk item. The other way is kind of using reflections. And so this is a important role for reflections because it's all about getting them to expand on the conversation, continue the conversation, moving the conversation in that direction. So let's say a client says to you, I need some help with this and could use the counseling, but if they find out at work, there'll be a lot of talking behind my back. So what do we have here in this statement? We have a typical client expressing kind of a blend of change talk and sustained talk. So what's the sustained talk? If they find out at work, there'll be a lot of talking behind my back. The reason I don't want to go for counseling is because I'm worried somebody's going to find out about it. But the change talk is, I need some help with this. It's more than what I can handle on my own. I could use some counseling. Right? And so that's the change talk. And presumably that's the direction we want to take the client in. So what kind of change talk? I need some help with this. I could use the counseling. So that's a blend of I need and also desire. I could use the counseling. So we've got two kinds of change talk going there. And so what would be a simple reflection? Well, we want to we want to focus on the change talk. So we don't want to get the client talking about what it would all the problems at work. Now at some point you might have to do some problem solving around that. Right? We're not saying that, but in terms of getting the client kind of over the hump to make a commitment towards change, we want to get them to focus on the reasons for change. So a simple reflection might be something like, counseling would help, right? Just kind of a simple statement, counseling would help, right? So yeah, it would help. And so it keeps the conversation going in that direction. Now we might want to go with a more complex reflection where we get sort of in behind kind of the scenes a little bit. So what's going on for the person? And so I think I've got it. It's getting to the point where it might be worth the risk. Right. And so you're seeing the client kind of struggling with this choice. I don't want people to find out, but maybe it's getting to the point where it's worth the risk. Now, again, we don't want to push the client. We're going to say it's worth unless you're kind of sure. But it sounds like it's getting to that point, right? Now, could be wrong, could be an overshoot there. Client might push back on that. That's okay. But it might be worth, but kind of knowing that situation, maybe it's worth doing it. I also put in here kind of a double-sided reflection, because this can kind of be useful because we see both sides of the ambivalence here. I need some help with this, the counseling, but there's I'm worried about the back talk. So you are worried about the gossip, but you could use the extra help. And so we're doing a double-sided reflection. Oh, I used the word but in there. I told you earlier we don't use the word but. On the one hand, you're worried about the gossip, and on the other hand, you could use some help with this, right? So, okay. The third response is what we call a bouquet. And this is basically a summary. And so when you've had enough conversation with a client and you've been able to identify a number of reasons for the person's, identified a number of pieces of a change, then what you want to do is kind of summarize that. And so this is a good use of summary, is to summarize each of the pieces of change. So when I listen to you, I hear that you wish you were in better physical you wish you were in better physical condition than you are now. It's important to you because you're getting older and you want to pay more attention to your health. You've had some success in the past with jogging, and so you're really feeling the need to kind of focus on this. Am I getting that right? And so you kind of summarize and reflect it back. By the way, you don't have to end with that question, am I getting it right? Because the client will kind of respond to that. So kind of that summary, we call that a bouquet, and we're kind of lining up the different reasons that the client has for making the change. Okay, so that kind of that's kind of the end piece for kind of the evoking piece. Obviously, in developing your skill set around motivational interviewing, this is a big piece of it, because it starts to incorporate all of the kind of earlier skills of open-ended questions, kind of reflections in your summaries, and obviously you use affirmations in there. So, but it really becomes about how do you kind of generate that change talk? How do you summarize that change talk? And what you're doing is you're trying to sort of create sort of some momentum for the client to kind of go up this hill of change. And when they, and then eventually, hopefully, they get to the top and say, okay, I need to do something about this. And then you can start shifting into kind of the planning and kind of the commitment piece of it. But you need to kind of get around that hill of kind of why the person wants to and needs to. That you need to get them articulating those reasons. And then it's okay. So now, what are you going to kind of where do you want to go with it now? Okay, so a lot of the kind of skill set of MI is kind of in this piece of it. Okay,